Hi, my name's JoJo Roy, and I'm from Senstream. And today we're going to talk about emotions, physiology, and why they matter. I'd like you to take a moment and envision yourself in a forest. Sun streaming through the trees, there's a cool breeze. You hear a little bit of rustling behind you. No audio. You hear some rustling behind you, and there's a bear. What just happens? You see the bear, and your body kicks into high gear. And it's in fight or flight mode. So steroids are coursing through your system, and if we happen to be lucky and are actually able to escape, then different hormones are released for recovery. We have a primal response of fight or flight. So these steroids, adrenaline, these chemicals are coursing through your system, and they kick your heart into high gear. They increase your blood pressure. They make you breathe faster, and they get your muscles ready to either fight or flee. Other parts of your body, like your digestive system, even shut down because you don't need it to run away from a bear. But in reality, we don't encounter bears on an everyday basis, but we do encounter psychological bears. The problem is your body doesn't know the difference between a bear and your boss, and that's a real problem.
So let's look at our day. We've got our little bear deflection there to compare these responses to. So stressors happen every day, like you have computer problems, you have these
audio
other things
that doesn't work.
that you have to deal with, and each one of those causes a spike in your steroids. And these things are taking time to metabolize. That is, once you have a spike, it just doesn't come back down to the baseline easily. So after time, you find yourself at a high level of arousal with these really high energy, it's like rocket fuel in your system. And if you're stuck behind a computer terminal, how does this affect your body? How are you going to relieve your stress that's caused by this arousal from your chemical state? So this is, over time, very unhealthy. To have this sort of chronic state of arousal is something that causes a lot of additional health problems. And every day we see cases of heart disease and associated things that are very common, and we hear a lot about them in the news. And it's the correlation between stress and obesity now is very well established in the sense that you are imbalanced by these hormones, and you do things to try to regain balance in your body. And one of the ways to do that is to take in sugar, which may make you feel better temporarily, but in the long term is very unhealthy. Another thing we have to work with from chronic stress is what we call autoimmune dysfunction, or cases where the immune system actually attacks the body because of the imbalance. Tissues are actually inflamed, and this is actually what you could call a mechanism of homeostasis. Something is trying to bring you back into balance. But if you're this out of balance with these adrenal hormones, it's a problem. It's something that we're trying to deal with.
So that's why they call these hormones the death hormone.
So the key here is that with a transient stressor, like might be happening right now, you can sense that you're stressed. Like you have receptors for that. You have ways of feeling that your muscles are tensed and that you're not particularly comfortable. However, with chronic stress, with long-term stress, there are no receptors. And that's true for any sensory system in the body. If you're given a constant stimulus, you just get used to it. Like this noise in the background may be a problem for people hearing way in the back. if we turned the sound off, you would notice it. The same is true for stress. If you could suddenly turn it off, then you would realize, wow, I was really not in a good state. So what can we do to improve the actual sensing of stress?
So if you can't accurately measure stress, you can't effectively manage it. So who are we and why are we here? My name's JoJo Roy again. I am CEO of Sequence, a creative development agency that's located in San Francisco and New York. And I've obsessed about stress for nearly 2 decades. I had a 10-month period in my life where my wife and I found out that we were expecting our first baby. My father was diagnosed with pancreatic cancer. He died from pancreatic cancer. I quit my job. We moved. I started a new job. We had a baby, and I lost my job. And since then, it's always been this source of fascination to me in terms of how different people cope with stress and why people cope some way and why others don't cope well. One of our co-founders who's not on stage, Manik Juneja, is a software development expert, and his teams have built software that people use on mobile and web platforms every day, millions of people. You make a reservation at a restaurant, you're using software his teams have built. My colleagues here, Hugh Lusted and Ben Knapp, have been at the intersection of technology and physiology for over 25 years. They've run a company called Biocontrol. Hugh is a PhD from Stanford in neuroscience. Ben is a PhD from Stanford in electrical engineering. They're both very illustrious scientist and engineer. But for 25 years, they've been building devices that allow you to control computers with physiological signals that have allowed performers to actually perform music. There's been a whole range of work they've done well over 2 decades.
One thing I should mention is this slide. Well, I don't have. There it is. Looking back and forth here. The BioMuse unit that we just put up a picture of it so you could see it, that we developed back in '87 was an experiment in early brain-computer interface work. And this was meant to be a device that our users could develop their own apps. And it allowed basically the use of any biosignal to be connected to a computer so that you could control the functions in that computer, video, robotics, various other things. Our work for a long time has been with the central nervous system, brain-computer interface, muscle, EMG signals, whatever. In the last, I'd say 7 years, we've become much more focused in studying emotions. And we're finding a much more effective way to give everyone feedback and to give us more insights into emotions is to use the autonomic nervous system. That is the sympathetic and the parasympathetic nervous system. So we've actually changed our focus quite a bit from where we started years ago. Oh, this looks like the top of my head. But actually, I'm not that bald yet. This is my finger. And we just wanted to change gears here and actually show you some of the signals that we're dealing with in our new interface. So I'm hoping you can see.
Yep.
Yes, you can. You see how the little drops of sweat appear? And then here's where they're sort of going away. So this is the video, microscope video, and I have my finger under the microscope, and I'm intentionally inducing this sympathetic skin response, as it's called, better known as GSR, or electrodermal response. And you can do that, most people can do this intentionally by taking a short, sharp breath, like, and then the little beads of sweat appear on your fingertip. So we can measure that electrically. The other thing that you can see here is that once you relax, the little tiny drops of sweat are reabsorbed. So these are very different sweat glands than you find in the rest of the skin on your body. Very tiny, high density here. So I just wanted to show you this. You can go to the Exploratorium. I think this exhibit is still up. You could see this for yourself. So this little tiny amount of water is what we're measuring in this sweat response. It's like what I have right now. And so let's go on and look at some of the other signals that we're looking at.
And it's a very different type of sweat than the sweat glands that are on other parts of our body.
It's not evoked thermally. It is evoked, that's why they call it the sympathetic sweat response. It's evoked by things that are going on in your head. You can do this intentionally by just creating an anxious thought in your mind, like think about missing that next mortgage payment or whatever. You can also see this if you come to our table, our booth at 5:30. We'll be demoing the technology, so you can see if you can intentionally have your own response like this. So moving on. Emotions cannot be measured directly, and even with a particular sensor, we can't just categorize so simply. So our approach now is to take several channels of data and correlate the data in order to give our users a general sense of their state of emotion or stress.
Now, so you probably have a couple questions. First, what do these signals look like over the course of the day? And second, a question that we've been working at a lot is what are the relationships between these signals and stress themselves? So my graduate students and I, over the past few years, have been running a science experiment in science museums across the world, in Asia, Europe, the United States. We've had over 10,000 people going through these experiments. And what we have people do is we have them listen to music. And we look at the relationship.
That wasn't supposed to be that loud. The bear was supposed to be loud.
What we have them do is we look at the relationship between music and these signals. And you probably all just had a reaction the same as those people on there just had that reaction. This is a collection of data averaged over 182 people. The top graph is what we call the emotion change. It's the skin sweat that Hugh showed you rapidly changing. The second graph is the slow changing skin sweat. And then the bottom graph above the audio is a graph of heart rate. And what you'll see is that this is a perfect analogy for what Hugh and JoJo described over the course of the day. So over the course of the day, your heart rate starts to go up, your GSR is going up, you're becoming more and more stressed. And notice how that skin sweat is staying high all the way to the end when the music finally stops, finally quiets down. And what's very significant for those that are looking at it, look at what happens at 70 seconds into this Slayer song. So Slayer is driving you crazy. It's just like Hugh said. It's this annoyance in the background, unless, of course, we were talking about earlier, unless you're going out and going to play in a football game or something. But it's this annoyance in the background, and then it stops. And everybody, all 182 people, heart rate begins to drop down, and they begin to relax. And you see a little bit of a blip up in the top graph at 70 seconds, where people are a little bit surprised at that quietness or at the end of Slayer. So this is what the signals look like, not just when you listen to music, but also what happens during the course of the day.
And one thing to add, we all intuitively know that music has an effect on us. We have a favorite song that makes us feel good. We listen to something to calm us down. What's really noteworthy here is it's not just a psychological effect. Feeling good actually has a physiological effect. And again, all these things do tie back to the chemicals, the biochemistry, the things that are actually in your system.
So we need a system that's going to measure these different signals, process this data, and inform us of our stress level over the course of a day. So what we've done is we've developed a system that's ergonomic, that fits between your fingertips. It measures your signal easily, connects to your mobile phone, sends the data to an app, and that app will then show you how you're doing. What is that hidden stress level that Hugh talked about at the beginning, that you don't know exactly how stressed you're feeling? What does that look like?
So let's look at just briefly an example of what this app would look like on your smartphone. So in this case, in this example, we're plotting two axes of data, just two channels, the heart rate variability and the skin response that we talked about before. And so the aim of this app is to inform you when you're going the right direction. Everybody's different, and so there's no absolute bad state, and there's no absolute perfect state for you to be in emotionally. But
maybe if your heart's not beating, that's an absolute.
Well, yeah. But for each individual, you may feel like you could be doing better. So this is what the app is designed for. So you can notice here in this illustration that you're moving in the zone, the upper left quadrant, and as soon as you are present, as soon as you make the least effort to just be mindful of your surroundings and get out of the basic mindset that you're in, immediately that causes a physiological change. And what we do is we give you that reinforcement that you're going the right direction. So in this illustration, we're moving towards this lower left quadrant. We're bringing that skin response down, and we're increasing heart rate variability. And so right here, you lose it a bit. You start imagining something that gives you a little anxiety, and you know you've kind of lost your direction there, and immediately you can bring it back to where you want it.
So if we review, what we're talking about is over the course of this day, this increased hormone level, this increased anxiety. So like measuring your weight, like they've shown that if you measure and monitor your weight, you can control your weight problem. Here what we're saying is if you measure and monitor your stress level, this hidden stress level, you can do something about the problem. What can you do? You may just take a deep breath and relax. You may go outside and go for a walk. You may listen to music and have it relax you. Finally, maybe you even just meditate. You go off in a room and you bring that baseline down, those death hormones out of your system, so at the end, you're back to where you should be. So what we're interested in doing is building a community. We're looking for 2,500 people to join us on a journey of becoming more mindful about our emotional state. How are we feeling? How are we doing? Not just alone and individually, but actually coming together online, breathing together online, listening to music online, even taking a walk together, or doing guided meditation together so that we can all see and all go together on this journey towards removing this stress from our system.
So how can you join us on this journey? Well, we've got 1,700 people here. We need another 800, so don't hesitate to talk to your friends. Come to Senstream.com, provide your information, and then we will get back to you with how to participate in this. Give you a little sense of what we've been doing. We've had 3 iterations of the hardware to refine it, to make it more accurate. We have had multiple iterations of industrial design to test both durability. Ergonomics is the most important thing. Multiple iterations of the software. Some of the interfaces you'll see when you come to the booth today are more, they're showing you raw signals as opposed to the actual final applications that you might see. But we've been very busy and we're really excited. We are thrilled that we could be here today, and we hope that you will consider joining us in the journey. And again, so at the booth, we will be there from 5:30 to 6:30 today and 5:30 to 6:30 tomorrow. So that's the Senstream booth. Thank you very much.